Hello, this movie is about EFI, electronic fuel injection, aftermarket standalone engine management system. This is most important part of tuning. Unfortunately, many people have missed this. Many people invest a lot of money on engine, forged pistons, forged connecting rods and even forged crankshaft, and continue to run with original ECU and mass airflow sensor. Customers often call us and ask, "Hi, I want to buy you big turbina, but I also need forged pistons and multi-layer 1000-layer steel head gasket because I will use the original K Jetronic system." No forged pistons in the world will save your engine from detonation if you can't control the fuel and ignition. It will never work. Never ever. Before you even consider to turbocharge your car, get yourself an EFI. In this movie, we will show you what you need to do to install EFI and why it is so important.
Okay, here is the basic parts for fuel injection standalone management system. Okay, ECU. It depends what brand you have, but actually all of them have the same functions basically, so this setup is the same for all systems. With standalone management system ECU, you always use map sensor instead of mass airflow sensor. So the map sensor, in this case, it's inside the ECU. Many other standalone management system does not have that integrated in the ECU, so you need to use external map sensor. Manifold absolute pressure sensor, measuring the intake manifold pressure instead of reading mass airflow, what mass airflow sensor does. So the map sensor is much more reliable. The first part is most important, this trigger wheel. Monitor of the position of rotational speed of the crankshaft. The most models from 90s and up already has it. Sometimes it's installed inside the DZ, but if your car is older and you have mechanic fuel injector systems or carburetor, then you probably don't have the trigger wheel. So you need this one, and you can install it on the front of the crankshaft. To read this signal on the trigger wheel, you need sensor, wear sensor or Hall sensor. When you install the sensor and the trigger wheel, make sure the trigger wheel is in the middle of the sensor, because the magnet inside the sensor is only 5 millimeters wide. So the wheel must be in the middle of the sensor. And make sure, it's very important, the gap between trigger wheel and sensor must be 1 millimeter. The most of the Hall sensors and inductive sensors, they need 1 millimeter gap. On my car I use stock crank position sensor and stock trigger wheel on the flex plate for automatic transmission. And if you want to run fully sequentially, you need the signal from the camshaft, and then you need cam sensor. Here we have stock cam position sensor, and the most of the newer models 90s up already has it too, but if you don't have, you need to install it on the cam, because crankshaft turns 2 times per 1 engine cycle, so it doesn't know when the cycles begin. So that's why you need the signal from the camshaft, then telling to ECU that here is the start point from the engine cycle. So you need 1 sensor on the crankshaft and 1 sensor on the camshaft. Many Japanese models has some kind of CAS triggers reading the signal only from the camshaft. They doesn't use any signal from the crankshaft, they use only the camshaft signal. Then you need water temperature sensor. And the same with the water temperature sensor if your car is newer than, I don't know, 90s, 95, they already has it, so you can use it. Water temperature sensor inside the water pump. Some models has it in the head, some models has it in the block, so you gotta find out. Then you need air temperature sensor near the throttle body. Some models has it inside the intake manifold. Some models has it on the pipe, but we prefer to install it near the throttle body. You need TPS, throttle position sensor, with adapter here. Sometimes you can rebuild the stock throttle body to fit the sensor, and sometimes you need to change throttle body to fit the sensor. And we made some kind of adapter to fit the sensor, and then you can just set it in the right position. Okay, then you need wideband lambda sensor. This sensor is very important because you can monitor the fuel mixture between the air and fuel. It's very important. Here we have lambda oxygen sensor. It's about 15 to 20 centimeters behind the turbine housing, turbocharger. The position of the lambda sensor is very important. It must be installed on the upside, and the maximum degree angle can be 45 degrees, not more. Otherwise, the moisture inside the sensor can never come out and the corrosion starts. And you can just buy a new sensor every week. So upside, like this, not like this. And absolutely not like this. This is the maximum angle, 45 degrees, not more than that. Very important. You don't want moisture and shit in those holes inside. If your car has carburetor or old mechanical fuel injection, then you need to install the fuel rail. This is the 6-cylinder fuel rail. Then you need fuel pressure regulator. You need fuel injectors. For ignition, it depends what engine you have. If you use coil and plug, it's one ignition coil on each cylinder. Or wasted spark ignition coil pack. For 6 cylinders you have 6 outputs, it's 3 ignition coils with 6 outputs. Or 4-cylinder coil, or if you use V8 you have 2 of 4-cylinder wasted spark coil pack. So basic parts: trigger wheel, sensor for the trigger wheel, cam sensor, water temperature sensor, air temperature sensor, throttle position sensor, and wideband lambda oxygen sensor. This is absolutely basic parts for EFI. If you want to be more advanced, you have more sensors to install. I prefer to control as much as possible. So here's the boost control valve installed near the wastegate to avoid long hoses between the turbocharger, wastegate and the solenoid. Here I use the same mag solenoid for exhaust throttle control. NOx sensor, I have 2 of them on the block to read detonation. This hose goes to the sensor inside the ECU to control vacuum pressure inside the crankcase. Here we have fuel pressure sensor inside the fuel pressure regulator to control fuel pressure. So if something happens and I lose fuel pressure, I can just shut off the engine. The same thing with oil pressure control. As soon as the pressure goes under the minimum, the engine just shut off. And you can even use exhaust temperature sensors. You can install it on each cylinder on the manifold, or you can install it on the downpipe or into the turbine housing on turbo. If your throttle wire is too short, this is the easy way to make it longer. You can see here it's 5 vacuum fittings goes to different things. One of them goes to map sensor inside the ECU. One goes to fuel pressure regulator. One goes to my exhaust throttle control. One goes to the blow-off valve. And the other one goes somewhere else. If your car is older than 10 years, I don't know, 20 years, it's always good idea to install new engine harness with the new cables. Like if you have 20 years old crap harness on your car, you can never know what the problems comes from. You can search for the million years, maybe one cable just losing the connection. It can be all kind of problems with the old harness, and you can never find it. So make a new harness, it's worth. And remember, when you make a harness, use shielded wire for crankshaft sensor and camshaft sensor. Remember that, very important. Okay, now I can show you the basics in software. We're going to make more videos with detailed tuning tips, but now I can show you the basics. We need to put ignition on.
Here is the front page, gauge cluster page. You can choose any gauges you want to see just by clicking the right mouse and choose any gauge you want. Here we have the engine information. You can feel the volume of the engine, how many cylinders you have, injector size. Here is the fire cycle of the inline 6, 153-624. Fan control, settings for when the fan goes on and when the fan goes off. Fan control by speed. So for example, if I drive faster than 70 kilometers an hour, then the fan goes off. Rev limiter, you have here hard rev limit, 8200. By running regular gas, 95, and we have water temperature based rev limit for the engine safety, for example. So you can only reach the maximum rev limit when the engine has working temperature and not overheated. For example, when the engine is too cold, you cannot reach the maximum rev limit, and when the engine is overheated, rev limit reduced. For example, when the temperature is 116 degrees, maximum rev limit is 2294. So it's pretty good safety thing. Fuel settings. Here we have Lambda Table. As you can see, this line is kPa load. It's vacuum and boost load. So 100 kPa is atmospheric pressure that we have on Earth on the most places. So everything below 100 is vacuum. For example, when you're idling, you usually have between 30 to 40 kPa. Maybe if you have racing cams, so maybe you're idling at 50 to 60, maybe 70. If you have extreme racing cams, maybe your vacuum is almost at 100. Almost no vacuum at all at idling. So anyway, everything above 100 is boost. So 200 kPa is 1 bar boost. So here is the Lambda table. As you can see, full throttle at atmospheric pressure, it's about 0.94, 92. At idling, it's about 1.0. Full throttle at 2 bar and 6000 RPM is 0.78. And with higher boost is even more richer. So at 3 bar and 6000 RPM, the Lambda is 0.77. Here's the fuel table for E85, and as usual, this line is kPa and this line is RPM. The other table is for 95 gas. Fuel pump safety. Like I said, I control the fuel pressure. If the fuel pressure goes under the minimum, then we have safety system for the fuel pressure. I even use AFR safety system for the Lambda. If the values goes under the minimum on the Lambda table, then safety system first warning me with the lamp. If I'm not responding for 1 second, then it kills spark for 0.2 seconds. So actually I can pull full throttle anytime and I don't need to be worried to something happens because the safety systems take care of the problem. Then we have ignition settings. You have the most of the triggers on the market, different models. You can see here Subaru, Honda, Mazda, any model you want. So you can use the stock trigger wheel on your car. I use regular trigger wheel 60-2. Here we have coil and plug. It means one ignition coil on each cylinder. Dual settings. Here we have two ignition tables, one for the fuel 95 and the other one for ethanol E85. As you can see here, the E85 table has about 10° higher ignition timing. With higher octane fuels and fuels like E85, you need more ignition timing. It's needed due to the slower flame speed, so the E85 is burning slower than regular gas. You can run with higher ignition timing and get more power. Then we can see the timing table for 95 octane. Ignition timing reduced by almost 10°. You can see here at 3-bar boost and 6000 RPM, it's only 5°. It's only 5° before top dead center. Yes, then we have air temperature based timing retard. For example, when the engine gets overheated, then we can retard ignition timing. For example, when the temperature is 110, then we reduce the ignition timing by 10° and reduce the power, some kind of choke the engine. I can fire the engine and show you a few stuff that you can do before you go to the final tune. It's very important that you have good signal from the crankshaft and from the camshaft, and you can do it in the oscilloscope in the software here. I can see both crankshaft sensor and camshaft sensor. As you can see, the blue ones is the teeth from the crankshaft. 58 teeth, can minimize them. And the green one, it's one tooth from the camshaft. As you see, the signal is perfect. Then we can see the straight of the signal. It's just perfect. You can see the voltage, everything. Then we can check the tooth logger. This one, the longest one, is the missing tooth. 58 teeth and the missing tooth. As we can see here, the signal is perfect. You can choose many different loggers here. You need to make sure that the trigger signal is perfect, because if trigger signal does not work, then you got a problem. There's nothing will work. The trigger signal is the most important part of tuning. Let's say we want to record it. We choose capture the log file and we run it. Yeah, when we're finished, we just stop logging, turn the engine off, file, open the log file, and here we have them. Auto-tune. You can choose settings how hard or how soft the auto-tune will work. It will tune your fuel table after those settings you choose for the Lambda table. Push this button, start auto-tune, and it starts recording. It's done. And just drive, just like you normally drive, different conditions, and it will tune your fuel table. Then you're done with that, you can just correct it manually to make it smoother when you get home. Here we have some dyno stuff. It actually works pretty good. It's not the same as the real dyno, but it's pretty close. Yes, you can go to performance and economy fields. You can see the fuel consumptions and actually the power of your car. It's actually pretty close to the real dyno. If you're lucky to get some good pull without spinning, for example at 4th gear, so you can actually calculate the power on the wheels. You need to know the weight of the car, tire pressure, frontal area units, and aerodynamic drag constant, and you can log the power. Actually pretty fun. Logging, data logging, it's very good stuff. You can actually record what you're doing and just drive, and you can record all the values, what happens with your engine and everything. When you're done, open the log and you can choose what you want to see. We say you want to see lambda, RPM you want to see, you can make it bigger, you can choose any value. You can go through and read all your values, hundreds of different values. If something wrong, you can correct it. And maybe you can see at some place it's running too lean. Then you can see where it's running too lean on the fuel table. Then you can just correct it. For example, here 2-bar boost and lambda is 0.78. It's perfect, so we don't need to change anything here. Then we can check the next one. Here boost 271 kPa. It's 1.7 bar, and we can see the lambda is still perfect. It's 0.79, so we don't need to change any value here. So it's you can sit home and tune and make some after tune, correct the values after you've been maybe using the auto tune. So it's so comfortable. For example, you check in your log and you check your water temperature. So wow, you can see the water temperature rising up at some point. Maybe you don't have enough cooling or something. Then maybe you see you have some unusual knocks, you have some detonation. Maybe you need to change your parameters for knock sensing to make it more sensitive. Or maybe you need to reduce the ignition timing at the point. Maybe you can see you're losing the fuel pressure at the boost. Maybe your fuel pump not strong enough. Maybe you have problem with your fuel pressure regulator. Then, for example, you have some misfiring at some point and you think, oh, maybe it's the spark plugs, maybe it's the bad ignition coil. And then you look at the log and okay, and you can see at the same point when you have misfiring, your battery voltage drops down. You have 11 volt instead of 14. Okay, then you see the real problem. Maybe your battery is not strong enough. Maybe it's too old. Maybe your generator is too weak, or maybe your generator cable is too small. So at some point at higher RPM, you need more current and you lose it, you drop current. Lower voltage gives weaker spark. It's not your coils, it's your voltage problem that causes misfiring. And you can see it here on the log. So you don't need to guess anymore, just guess, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. You can see all the problems here. And finally, you can make the good tune. You can eliminate all the problems and make your car works perfectly every day for everyday use. Just like a normal car from the factory. You can make it by yourself. And maybe you think, oh, okay, I cannot English, so it's nothing for me. Okay, no problem. We go here, language, okay. What do you want? You want Russian? Okay, we take Russian. Бам! Все по-русски. Бам, пожалуйста. Все по-русски, пожалуйста, занимайтесь. Вот, все на русском, тут везде, все, что вам надо. На любом языке. Okay, Arabic? Okay, no problem. We take Arabic. Oh, mashallah. Look at here. Oh, min fadlika istamta. No limits. Like I said, it's only the basics. We're going to make more videos about more detailed tuning. How to tune, how to use advanced functions. But this is only the basics. When you run stock ECU, you have no idea what happens with the engine. You have no idea what happens with fuel or ignition, detonation, the temperature, and nothing. And you're just hoping for the best. And you think, oh, I have forged pistons, maybe they can help me. No, get yourself EFI. It's the most important part of the tuning. Do you want a big turbina? Get yourself EFI.